My wife dropped a bomb on me during what was supposed to be our 10th anniversary celebration. She announced, in front of everyone, that she was leaving me for her boss. Yep, right there at the party. But her own family shut her down immediately, and now, 7 months later, it seems like karma's finally circled back around. I'm still trying to process it all. It's been 3 days since everything just collapsed, and writing it out is the only way I can start to make sense of any of it. Even now, putting these words together feels like trying to type through fog. I never pictured myself being the guy airing out his relationship nightmare on Reddit, hiding behind names like Donald and Sandra, because, let's be honest, that's what everyone on here uses. But I'm genuinely nervous someone we know might read this and figure it out, though with how insane this story is, anyone who was there would probably recognize it in a heartbeat. Anyway, I guess the best place to begin is with what my life looked like just a few days ago. Up until then, I thought my marriage was fine. Not flawless, but functional. We had our issues like everyone else, sure, but things seemed solid enough. We had plans. We were building toward something, or so I thought. Turns out that future went up in flames. For a bit of background, my wife, let's call her Sandra, has always had what you might politely call a strong personality. When things don't go her way, or if you so much as challenge her opinion, she can flip the switch in a second. She talks fast, gets loud, and has a habit of slamming things. Doors, drawers, whatever's nearby. Sometimes she'll toss whatever's in her hand just to make a point. Then comes the cold shoulder, like clockwork, until she eventually gets her way. I stayed in it for years because I loved her. Over time, I just learned to adapt, to dodge the conflict instead of confronting it. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I do. But it's like that old story about the frog in boiling water. You don't realize you're cooked until it's too late. After a decade together, I'd basically built an entire toolkit for managing her moods. I could spot a blow-up coming from a mile away and would go out of my way to head it off. I'd shift my tone, change my words, reroute whole conversations just to keep the peace. Looking back, it's kind of exhausting to even think about, but at the time, it felt like survival. I figure before I get to the main event, I should give a few examples of what life with Sandra was really like, just to paint the picture. Take this one time about 3 years ago, we were getting ready to do some home renovations. Nothing outrageous, just finally upgrading the kitchen and master bath after saving for years. I was pumped about it. Felt like we were finally turning our starter house into a real home. Naturally, Sandra jumped in to take charge of the whole thing. I didn't mind. She's always been more into design stuff than me anyway. But then she picked a contractor after just one meeting. Said the guy was charming and seemed to know his stuff. I took a look at the quote, and my gut immediately told me something was off. The budget was already stretching past what we'd agreed on, and the timeline was a joke. They claimed they could redo our entire kitchen in 2 weeks, which anyone who's ever swung a hammer knows is pure fantasy. On top of that, the materials list was vague as hell. Stuff like premium countertops and high-end cabinetry, but no mention of brands or actual materials. I'd read enough horror stories to know we were about to get screwed, so I carefully brought it up. I didn't accuse her of anything, just said we should maybe get a couple more quotes, just to be safe. Well, that suggestion went over like a lead balloon. She exploded, yelling that I didn't trust her, that I was undermining her decisions, that I always found ways to make her feel small. She slammed the door and gave me the full silent treatment for 2 days straight. 2 whole days of being iced out. All because I suggested we get another estimate on a major home investment. Eventually, I managed to get through to her. Not by talking, but by casually leaving renovation horror stories open on my laptop where she could accidentally come across them. We ended up getting that second quote, and surprise, surprise, the first guy was charging way too much and glossing over a bunch of important details. The new contractor pointed out all the things the first one had ignored. Sandra went with the second company in the end, but never admitted she was wrong. Never said sorry. She just acted like switching contractors had been her idea all along. Honestly, I was so relieved we weren't getting ripped off I didn't push it. I mentally filed it under fights not worth having. Another time, this was about 1.5 years ago, we were planning our yearly vacation. It was supposed to be my turn to pick the destination. We always took turns, and it had worked out well until then. We talked about doing something outdoorsy, maybe renting a cabin near a national park, going hiking, just unplugging for a while. Sandra had always seemed to love those trips. We'd sit around the fire with a bottle of wine, talking under the stars. Some of my favorite memories, honestly. I spent months researching the perfect spot. Had a whole folder of booked cabins, places near Yosemite, guided hikes, even a service that delivered gourmet meal kits so we wouldn't have to plan out every meal. I was genuinely excited and kept dropping little hints about it. Sandra acted interested, asked questions, seemed into it. At least that's what I thought at the time. Then, completely out of the blue, she strolls into the house one afternoon waving around a travel magazine like it's a golden ticket. She'd read some glossy article about this ultra-luxury Caribbean resort. Private plunge pools, personal butlers, spa treatments, the whole 9 yards, and suddenly, that's where she decided we were vacationing. Never mind the fact that it cost nearly 3 times what we'd originally budgeted for. When I reminded her, calmly mind you, that I'd been working on our outdoor trip for months and pointed out how much more expensive this resort was, she just snapped. She blew up, accusing me of deliberately trying to ruin things, of being a cheapskate who wanted to rob her of the kind of vacation everyone else gets to enjoy. She started ranting about how all our friends take fancy trips, which wasn't remotely true, and said I was embarrassing her with my penny-pinching ways, also false. I'm just financially responsible. Then, she hurled one of our throw pillows across the room, knocking over a framed photo from our wedding. It shattered when it hit the floor, which, looking back, feels like an omen I missed. She declared the cabin trip was off and said if I was going to be a buzzkill, she'd book the luxury place herself. She stormed into our bedroom and slammed the door so hard that a painting on the wall came loose and crashed to the floor. She didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. I ended up crashing on the couch. The next morning, I tried to revisit the conversation, hoping she might have cooled off, but she just acted like none of it had even happened. That same day, without another word, she booked the resort and put the whole thing on our joint credit card before I even had a chance to weigh in again. At that point, I didn't argue. What was the use? I'd been through enough of these situations to know that pushing back would only lead to more tension. More of her passive-aggressive comments, more walking on eggshells, more emotional whiplash. So yeah, we went to the fancy resort. And sure, it was beautiful. But I couldn't really enjoy it, not knowing how we got there and what it cost us, not just in money, but in the way I kept losing pieces of myself in these battles I never really won. This wasn't a one-time thing either. It became a pattern in our marriage. Anytime I voiced concern or disagreed with her on something, it was like lighting a fuse. She'd explode, give me the cold shoulder, and bulldoze ahead with whatever she wanted to do anyway. I try to be calm, to state my point rationally, but it always ended the same way, with me giving in just to avoid the blowback. Our friends used to make jokes about how Sandra ran the show in our relationship. They'd nudge me with a drink in hand and say things like, "Hey, happy wife, happy life, right, Donald?" And I'd chuckle along, play the part, because what was I supposed to do? Admit I was scared of my own wife's temper? Admit that somewhere along the way I stopped even trying to be an equal partner because the emotional cost was just too high. It's so obvious to me now how toxic the whole dynamic was. But when you're in the thick of it, it just becomes your version of normal. You adapt. You tell yourself every couple has their quirks. And it's not like it was all bad, we had good moments too. I really did love her. But after years of ducking her moods, biting my tongue, and constantly putting my own needs second, it just wore me down. I didn't fully grasp how much damage had been done until the whole thing fell apart. Which brings me to the night everything came crashing down. The moment that shattered whatever illusions I still had about my marriage, and about who Sandra really was. It was 3 nights ago, and we were throwing a party to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. We'd rented out this nice little venue downtown, and about 50 people showed up. Friends, a few of my coworkers, and Sandra's whole family, including her parents and both her younger brothers. My own family couldn't make it. My folks live in Portugal now, retired a few years back, and my sister's out in Australia. Honestly, that might have been a blessing. At least they didn't have to witness the circus in person. Up until the blow-up, the evening was going great. The food was fantastic, drinks were flowing, everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. A few people had even gotten up during dinner to share stories or give little toasts, congratulating us on making it a full decade. Sandra was all smiles, affectionate, holding my hand under the table, whispering little jokes about some of the speeches. She seemed happy. After dinner wrapped, I was getting ready to go up to the mic and give a short thank you speech. I'd written a few kind words about Sandra, was planning to thank everyone for celebrating with us. It wasn't anything elaborate, just something heartfelt. But just as I was about to make my way toward the stage, Sandra beat me to it. And she brought someone with her, her boss, Anthony. I didn't even know he was there. He hadn't been on the guest list we'd gone over together. Apparently, he showed up about an hour into the party right after Sandra had stepped outside for a bit and come back in with him. I caught the confused look her dad gave her mom when Anthony walked in, so it wasn't just me, nobody expected him to be there. Then Sandra walks up to the microphone, Anthony trailing just behind her, and grabs it like she's about to make some grand announcement. The room quieted down as people turned to look. She had this look on her face, kind of smug, almost like she was proud of herself. Not the usual warm smile she put on in public. This was different. There was a sharpness to it. She starts talking about how this night wasn't just about celebrating 10 years of marriage, it was also about embracing new beginnings. At first, I thought she was announcing a promotion or some big career news. I felt a little puzzled, but I wasn't alarmed. Yet, then without even the slightest hint of warning, she said she was leaving me. You could have heard a pin drop. The entire room went still, like time froze. People were looking at her, then back at me like they couldn't believe what they just heard. And honestly, neither could I. It was like the air got sucked out of my lungs. My brain couldn't even process it. The words didn't fit together. Sandra and leaving me didn't belong in the same sentence, at least not in my mind. For a moment, I truly believed there had to be some mistake. Maybe I misheard. Maybe it was some sort of twisted joke. But no. She kept talking. And that's when it all really hit the fan. She turned toward Anthony, this guy standing there like he belonged, and announced that she was leaving me for him. Just like that. She said she'd finally found someone better, someone who was man enough to give me what I want, a baby and a real family. Those words hit me like a freight train. Man enough. I felt those two words carve right through me. We'd been trying for a baby for years without any luck. And not long ago, I found out I had fertility issues. That news had wrecked me. It was something we were still navigating together, or so I thought. It was private. Personal. We hadn't told many people, just our immediate families. And now here she was, dragging that out into the open, turning my pain into some kind of public justification for trading me in. She ended her little speech with, "This is happening now. This is my choice, and I'm moving forward with it," in this ice-cold, business-like tone. She didn't sound like someone making a life-changing decision, she sounded like she was closing a deal. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. My body felt numb, like I'd taken a punch straight to the gut and my brain hadn't caught up yet. Everything blurred around me, the lights, the faces, the shocked silence of our guests. I remember locking eyes with people I knew well, friends who had just toasted to our love minutes earlier, now staring at me with a mix of pity and horror. Then I looked back at her, my wife of 10 years, standing there next to her boss, this smug, twice-divorced clown who'd been in our home, at our dinner table, shaking my hand while he was sleeping with my wife behind my back. My mind was racing. I couldn't stop asking myself, when did this start? How long has this been going on? How did I miss it? We just had dinner the night before, planning out the final details for this party. She kissed me goodbye that very morning before work. How the hell do you go from that to doing this? What kind of person does this? I didn't have time to respond. Sandra's father stood up first. He pointed right at her and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Your behavior is shameful, Sandra. What you're saying about Donald is cruel and false, and doing it here, like this, in front of everyone. Completely unacceptable." Then her mom stood up too. "This isn't how we raised you. We can't support this, not any of it." But her dad wasn't finished. He dropped the hammer. "Because of what you've done tonight, the way you've humiliated your husband and yourself, we're done. You've cut yourself off from this family. We disown you, Sandra." Every one of them, her mom, dad, and both brothers, stood up and left the venue together. Didn't look back. Sandra shouted after them, but they didn't even pause. I've known her family for over 10 years. They're old school in a lot of ways, tight-knit, strong sense of right and wrong, but they've always been loving. Supportive. To see them walk out like that, united in their disgust, that's when the full weight of it hit me. If even they were turning their backs on her, then what she did wasn't just wrong. It was something beyond forgiveness. She clearly hadn't seen that coming. She started yelling after them, but her voice had gone shrill and panicked. I couldn't even hear the words, just this high-pitched screech drowned out by the rush of blood pounding in my ears. Anthony tried to calm her down, reached out like he was going to touch her arm, and she snapped, jerked away from him like he was the problem now. In that moment, she looked unhinged. Gone was the triumphant, self-assured woman who'd made the big announcement a minute ago. What was left was pure chaos. That's when something inside me switched off. All the noise in my head went quiet. It was like my brain pulled the emergency brake so I could at least function. I walked up to the stage, cool, steady, detached. I didn't even feel like myself anymore, like I was watching some other guy move through the motions. I looked them both dead in the eye and said, clear as day, you need to leave. My voice was calm but cold. Like ice. Anthony, unbelievably, had the nerve to try and say, Donald, we need to talk, but I cut him off. No, we don't, I snapped. You both need to get the F*** out of here before I break your damn nose. Asterisk. I pointed toward the door, the same one her family had just walked through. I didn't yell, I didn't make a scene, I just said it in a way that made it clear I wasn't asking twice. Something in my face must have told them I meant it. They both stared for a second, then turned and walked to the table where they'd left their stuff. And just like that, they were gone. The silence that followed was deafening. 50 people dead quiet. No one said a word. Just stunned faces, all looking at me like I'd been hit by a truck and somehow managed to stay standing. My boss was there. His wife. Friends I've known for decades. People who had followed our relationship from the beginning. I could feel their eyes on me like they were waiting to see if I'd collapse or lash out or cry. But I felt none of those things. Just empty. I stepped back up to the mic. My throat felt tight, but I cleared it and said, well, I think it's safe to say the party's over. I'm sorry it had to end like this. My voice cracked slightly, but I held it together. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your support. What else could I have said? Hey everyone, surprise. My wife's been cheating on me with her boss and I just found out at the same time you did. Or, don't worry about me. I'm just dying inside. There was nothing, no words, no clever wrap-up that could erase what had just happened. People slowly started gathering their coats and purses, whispering to each other with those sideways glances people give when they're not sure what to say. I got a lot of awkward pats on the back, some stiff hugs, and the usual half-hearted lines, let me know if you need anything, or man, I'm really sorry. I thanked them, nodded along, but truthfully it was like hearing everything underwater. Distant. Muted. None of it felt real. Within half an hour, the place had mostly cleared out. Just me and the venue staff remained, and even they looked like they didn't want to be there. They were moving quietly, cleaning around me like I was a bomb that might still go off. I stayed to help. Part of it was the rental agreement. We were supposed to assist with cleanup, but mostly I just needed something to do with my hands. Something normal. Sweeping up spilled drinks felt easier than facing the crater where my life had just been. The venue manager kept giving me that same pitying look everyone else had, which only made it worse. I signed the forms, settled the final bill, and eventually made my way out the door. When I got home and stepped into the quiet of our house, it hit me like a second wave crashing down. 10 years. A whole decade. Gone in a single night. I sat on the edge of the bed we used to share and finally let it all out. I broke down completely. I couldn't tell you how long I sat there like that, just wrecked. Eventually, I pulled myself together enough to grab my phone, not really knowing what I expected to see. That's when I saw the flood of texts from Sandra. Her messages were all over the place. The first ones were about her family's reaction, stuff like, I can't believe they would do this to me and they had no right to say those things. Then she shifted to saying she knew the announcement was a mistake, but still stood by her decision to leave me. I shouldn't have done it that way, but I need to move on, she wrote, like this whole thing was a job change or moving apartments. After that, she switched gears again, suddenly suggesting we talk it through, maybe see a counselor. We should sit down with someone who can help us through this transition, she said, like we were co-workers restructuring a team, not a couple whose marriage she just torched in public. And then, true to form, she pivoted once more, this time blaming me. If you had been more attentive, if you'd taken my needs seriously, this wouldn't have happened. It was like she was throwing everything she could think of at the wall, hoping something might stick. One second she was the victim, the next she was the martyr offering a chance at reconciliation, and then she was the one lashing out, saying this was somehow all my fault. It was textbook Sandra. No accountability. No real apology. Just frantic spin and self-preservation. But this time, there was no version of events she could twist. No narrative she could bend to make herself the hero. She crossed a line and there was no coming back from it. I didn't reply. Didn't answer her calls. I made a decision right then and there. I was done. I called a divorce lawyer the next morning and booked the first available appointment. It was time to start over, and that meant formally ending the marriage. We had rented a private room for the event, nothing massive, but classy. Sandra's parents and both her younger brothers had been there since the beginning. They were seated at a table near the small stage, same spot where the speeches were happening. My family couldn't be there, they all live overseas, so it was mostly her people and our close friends. Anthony, her boss, wasn't on the guest list. He showed up about an hour in, right after Sandra disappeared briefly, and came back in with him. From the looks on her parents' faces, they didn't know he was coming either. A few people asked what she said word for word. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was something close to this. Everyone, I have something to share. Tonight isn't just a celebration of 10 years of marriage, it's also about a new beginning. I'm leaving Donald. I'm leaving Donald for Anthony. Then she pointed right at him. I've found someone who's better for me. Someone who is truly man enough to give me what I want, which is a baby and to build a family. This is happening now. This is my decision, and I'm moving forward. That was the moment. That was when I knew it was over, truly over. I didn't wait around for explanations. I met with the divorce attorney the next morning. I laid it all out, the party, the public announcement, the affair, the humiliation, everything. We went over our finances, assets, property. I gave him what he needed, and within a few days he had the paperwork ready. I signed the petition, and a process server delivered the documents to Sandra at our house. She was still staying there at the time. After she got served, the tone of her messages changed fast. She went from rattled to furious. She kept texting me nonstop, demanding I withdraw the petition, insisting I had no right to file, that I was overreacting and blowing things out of proportion. She alternated between guilt-tripping me and straight-up insulting me. She even accused me of trying to destroy her life. That part almost made me laugh, almost. Like I'm the one who wrecked everything, when she's the one who got up on a stage, told 50 people she was dumping me, and declared her new relationship with her boss like it was a promotion. I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing it because I finally see her for who she really is. And I'm not going to waste another day pretending this marriage is something it's not. I never responded to any of Sandra's texts. Not a single one. But I did save them all, especially the threatening ones, and passed them straight to my lawyer. I told him to make it crystal clear to her attorney, yes, she hired one almost immediately, that going forward all communication had to go through the legal channels. I was done talking to her. No more back and forth, no more emotional chaos, just business from here on out. And that's where things stood for a while. The divorce was underway. Everything had to go through our lawyers, and I was left trying to figure out how to rebuild the life I thought I knew. It's been a minute since I last checked in, and a lot has changed. First off, the divorce is final. Done. Signed, stamped, and behind me. And I've got to say, I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again. After she was served the divorce papers and brought her lawyer into the mix, Sandra filed her official response. Unsurprisingly, it left out the real story. No mention of the stunt she pulled at our anniversary. No acknowledgement of how she ambushed me in front of friends, coworkers, and her own family. Just a sanitized version of events with her painting herself as the innocent party. And on top of all that, she actually had the nerve to request alimony. Yeah, after dumping me in public for her boss, saying I wasn't man enough to give her a family, she wanted spousal support. Her argument was based on our income difference and the duration of our marriage, conveniently ignoring the fact that she blew everything up. It was like she thought she could just rewrite the script and pretend she was the one left behind. Around that same time, I started hearing from mutual friends that she'd been reaching out to them too, trying to spin her version of the story. She was making herself out to be the victim, like I had wronged her somehow. Meanwhile, she was in court trying to get money from me. That combination, trying to smear my name while also reaching into my wallet, was the final straw. When my lawyer showed me her alimony request, we sat down and talked strategy. In our state, judges mainly weigh things like how long you were married and your financial situation, but how the marriage ended can play a role too, especially if it's extreme. So, we didn't threaten her or make it personal, we just laid out the facts. My lawyer sent hers a formal notice stating that if she moved forward with her alimony claim, we would introduce detailed evidence about what really happened. That included sworn statements from me and witnesses describing in full what went down at the party, her speech, the things she said about me, her family disowning her right there in the room. We were prepared to tell the whole story under oath with as many people backing it up as necessary. And just like that, within a few days, her lawyer contacted mine and said they were withdrawing the alimony request. They filed the paperwork officially not long after that. She backed off fast once she realized I wasn't going to roll over. Since then, word has gotten around that things haven't gone great for Sandra. From what I've heard through friends, she left or was let go from the company where Anthony, her boss-turned-boyfriend, worked. It happened a couple months after the party. Nobody's sure exactly what went down, but she hasn't found another job at that level since. Money got tight, and eventually she had to move in with one of her cousins because she couldn't afford rent on her own. As far as I know, her family hasn't softened either. They haven't spoken to her or reconnected since the night of the party. That bridge wasn't just burned, it was nuked. Here's how it all played out. Sandra ended our marriage in front of 50 people at our anniversary party. Her family immediately disowned her. I filed for divorce the next morning. She tried to come after me for alimony. I made it clear we'd go to court with full testimony and evidence. She dropped her claim for support. She lost her job. She moved in with a relative due to financial struggles. The divorce process itself was surprisingly clean after that. We split up our assets, which wasn't too complicated, and the court finalized everything not long after. We've had no direct contact since then, and the rare moments something needs addressing, it goes through our lawyers. As for Anthony? From what little I've heard, he and Sandra didn't last. Word is they broke up around the same time she left the company. I don't know any of the details, and to be honest, I don't care. This'll be my last update on all this. The chapter's closed. These last 7 months were hell, but I've come out of it stronger. For the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful about what comes next.